Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Barakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well. In peace and salutations to you, sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson. And in this lesson, I'll be profiling a little bit of this video from Sean Ryan Clips' YouTube channel titled, "Is America Headed for Another Civil War?" And that's exactly where America's heading, according to biblical prophecy. I'm going to start the video at the 30-second mark and play the first couple of minutes or so. And this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes. And hey, you know, as we get closer and closer to all hell breaking loose out here, more and more people are waking up out here and seeing, you know, the divisions and the problems in this society. A lot of people are on edge over who's going to get selected during this upcoming presidential selection. But then on top of that, what do you got? You know, the economy on the verge of collapse, you know, this migrant crisis, the list goes on and on. There's so many, you know, we'll call them black swan events that are, you know, manifesting themselves right now, that it could be any one of them that just sets it off out here. And, you know, just with that little push, these Americans, which are already, you know, very distrustful of one another and see, you know, the other side as the one causing the problems, hey, they're going to be all green lights go to go, you know, go at each other's throats.
I know it's a super touchy subject, obviously, but people talk about it all the time. Civil War. Do you guys think we're headed to a civil war?
I think it's possible. I think at the very least, I think we're headed towards civil disobedience. I think that will come first. And I do think we're headed down a track of, you know, towards totalitarian rule. Back in the day, it was.
And civil disobedience is only going to last for so long when people are out on the streets, lost their jobs, you know, can't afford to buy food for themselves or their children due to, you know, inflation and hyperinflation. Hey, it's up there.
Divide us all up economically, the haves and the have-nots. Now they've employed, and I think even more effective tactic here in the West, and that's divide us all up by race, ethnicity, gender. And Dr. Vodi Bakum would call that cultural Marxism. And I think it's been very effective here, but...
And hey, that's through the will of Yahweh Bahasham Yahawashi that these elites have been able to, you know, foment so much division amongst the people here along, you know, racial lines, religious lines, political affiliations, etc., etc. And on top of civil unrest, hey, there are going to be racial wars out here as well. This is Isaiah chapter 13. I'm going to read verses 14 to 16. And it shall be as the chaste roe. And that's talking about these Edomites, the so-called white people. Read Job chapter 18. It refers to the wicked, who the Edomites are the wicked according to the scriptures, as pursuant to Malachi 1 verse 4, as the chaste roe. And as a sheep that no man taketh up, they shall every man turn to his own people and flee every one into his own land. And you're going to see a lot of that happening with these people that came to America for that American dream, returning to their countries because it's becoming quickly unaffordable here to do business or just make a living. Hey, but for those that've got nowhere left to go, they're going to go at each other. Verse 15, everyone that is found shall be thrust through. Everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. It's going to become very tribal out here. If you're not found amongst your own nation of people in that day, hey, you're going to get put down. And, like I said, that chaste row is talking about the Edomites. Hey, because while everybody's going to be going at each other, hey, a lot of these different nations are especially going to be going after you Edomites. And hey, to you Israelites out there, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, that want to hold hands with the devil and being this we are the world spirit, hey, you're gonna see that old 1800s, 1950s spirit really come on these Edomites when they truly see that there's no going back for America. Verse 16, their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Children are going to be getting deleted. Their houses shall be spoiled, home invasions, and their wives ravished or raped.
Instead of trying to unite us around the values that, have made this country so great and have created so much opportunity and prosperity for us all, they try and divide us up on all these different metrics and barometers, and it just makes it easier for them to conquer us and then to present themselves as the savior, as the solution. And it blows me away that some people can still be gaslit into thinking that the federal government would ever be the solution for anything.
Hey, that ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos, and the golden days of America are over. There was a time, when people could, to an extent put aside their differences and come together and be under that we are one America dream. But now we're in the times of division, in the times of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, breaking this country down on all levels. And, you got to understand what times you're living in. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 1. And the header reads, a time for everything. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. There is a time for America to be planted down and take root, but now we're in the time where this root, this vine, this tree of America is withering, and it needs to be plucked out. A time to delete, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. And let me ask you, in October of 2024 America, are more people weeping or are more people laughing? Are more people mourning or more people dancing? A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, coming together, and a time to refrain from embracing, separating, breaking apart. A time to get and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. And with just the fact that you're hearing more and more talks about is there going to be another civil war in America, with all this other negative news coming out, out here, what times do you think you're living in? Do you think you're living in a time of love and peace, or a time of war and hate?
I think the Civil War question is, I think it'd be more of a regional thing. I always remembered when Trump was giving a speech at the White House and riots were, you remember where Rand Paul got attacked, him and his wife did. And then I guess we were maybe 100 yards behind that. And so we went back the other way. And I remember the police were, Andy Barr from Kentucky, his wife had died. And he had his two precious little girls there in these pretty little matching dresses. And people were just saying filthy stuff. And I'd had enough.
And that's another aspect to it, too. Not just the average everyday Americans out here fighting, but them going against, these politicians. Because, more and more people are waking up to the fact that these politicians don't have their best interests at heart. The only interests they have are their corporate interests. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to read verse 16. For there shall be sedition amongst men. And that word sedition means conduct or speech inciting open rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch. And, just recently, Congress talked about passing a new amendment to replace, without voting, congressmen and senators who get deleted in a mass, event out here, a mass kinetic event out here. And, with things like that, more than likely it's the powers that be behind the scenes pulling the strings. But according to the scriptures, there are going to be people out here coming after these politicians. I've done videos in the past showing that with each successive year, verbal threats of violence against politicians have been increasing. Well, eventually that seditious talk is going to go to seditious action and invading one another, that physical action. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. And your modern day kings and princes are these people in the government, the mayor, the governor, the senators, the presidents, as well as the authorities like the military or the police that uphold the system. It's going to get to a point to where people aren't going to care about a suit and a tie or a badge or a uniform. They're going to be getting at how they live. And the course of their actions shall stand in their power.
And I told those, I asked that one little girl, I said, you want me to carry you? And she said, no. And I just held her little hand. And I told her, I said, those people probably just needed Jesus, honey. I said, we pray for them. And it seemed to give her a little comfort. But anyway, we had the girls. Mark Green was with me on one side. And I remembered the police. This town was like boarded up. And I'm not a big city guy. So, but the blocks on every corner, that's where the cops were. And they weren't allowed to go within the city, within the block. They were told where to be. And I just thought, this is what civil war looks like. I mean, I think it'll be a regional type situation where people will move out of the...
And what did you just say? Some areas were cordoned off to where, even the police had to get permission to enter certain areas. That's just an appetizer of what's to come, because these cities will be under lockdown, whether it be from, civil unrest and political violence, a pestilence causing another L down like 2019 to 2021, economic collapse, domestic tea events, etc., etc. Cyber attacks and blackouts or grid down situations. Hey, like I said earlier, there's so many potential black swan events to get this thing popped off. But back in 2nd Esdras chapter 15 verse 17, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. What does that sound like? L down, a state of martial law where you're going to have the right identification to move around. And it's interesting that verse came after verse 16, talking about sedition among men and invading one another.
The people who will get out, and they'll come to places like Tennessee, refugees, so to speak, and then they will end up, when they leave their states, though, they will turn them over to the cabal or whatever, the corrupt far left machine, and that's what it will. And I think you'll see two Americas emerge, more so than we have now. And also, but
And what does it say in the scriptures about a kingdom being divided? This is Mark chapter 3, verses 24 to 25. And when you read it in the Bible, it's in red letters. So it's Yahushai, the Son of the Most High, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus speaking. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And in the United States of America, this country is divided on damn near every level it can be divided on. Nobody can really come together to get things, done. And, these other nations, like your Russia, your China's, whoever, hey, they're together in their goals for what? Becoming the next superpower. So it's making it that much easier for when these other nations come to make their moves on America. It's going to be easy because there's so much division here. There's some people for forwarding America. There's some people for America collapsing, Verse 25, and if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And within the house or the race of the Edomites, hey, they're divided. The left-right divide, the religious versus atheistic divide. Edomite men and women are divided against each other, etc., etc.
I'm at these gun shows. I hear these guys talking tough, and I said this at breakfast to y'all that they're gonna, if a tank rolls down the street, they're gonna, hands will go up. You guys will know how to handle that, but people like me will not know how to handle that. I just can't see that happening. I see somebody shoots a couple shots and they get them fired back, and they're throwing the white flag up. So
and you are gonna see tanks and MREPs and other military vehicles on the streets of America. Remember, during 2019 to 2021, and during those George Floyd protests, you saw militarized police with militarized vehicles and assault weapons out here. And then plenty of videos came out showing, train cars, like one after another, with Humvees, MREPs, and tanks, military vehicles moving all across the country. A lot of those are being moved for World War III, which is coming. Hey, but a lot of them are being moved in place to what? Be used on the streets of America.
I don't know what that would look like.
I think about it all the time, and I don't think it looks like how traditional civil wars look. I mean, look, we saw a 17-year-old kid and an entire city of riots with 3 bullets? Done. Immediately stopped. I don't think that's what it looks like. I think it's like what you're talking about, and I think it's already starting.
And we'll end it on that note. It is already starting. As Bane said in The Dark Knight, the fire rises, and that fire will not be quenched. Now let's get back to these precepts. This is Isaiah chapter 19, verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. And this isn't talking about ancient Egypt or Mizraim, who are Hamites or so-called Africans. This is talking about those modern day spiritual Egyptians as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8. These Americans, specifically these American Edomites. And I will set the Egyptians, the Americans, against the Americans, and they shall fight, everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. What does that sound like? Civil unrest, civil war. And, a few of those guys in that clip kept talking about it being a regional thing. Well, what does a city against a city involve? One region against another region. People fighting against each other, cities, states, breaking apart and creating their own enclaves. Just a free-for-all out here. Now I'm going to go back to 2nd Esdras chapter 15. I'm going to read verses 14 to 15. Woe, or destruction to the world and them that dwell therein. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another. That goes into many things. One political group against another. Class warfare with the rich versus the poor. Race wars. Nations rising against nations. The average everyday person going against those in the government. And swords in their hands. And that modern day sword in America being what? The gun. Now I'm going to close it out in 2nd Esdras chapter 13, verse 31. And one shall undertake to fight against another, one city against another, one place against another, it being very regional. one people against another, and one realm against another. And hey, what this is ultimately leading towards is the second coming of the Son of the Most High, Yahushua, where he's going to come with the hosts of heaven, the realm of heaven, to fight against the realm of man. So hey, with the state of things and current events, hey, it's all perfectly lining up with biblical prophecy. And as it said in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, there's a time and a season for everything. And we're in the time of lamentations, mournings, woe, hate, wars, and deletions. Not a time of coming together, peace, love, and enjoying, Saturday with your boo on the lake. But that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. As we can clearly see, we are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.